first Ask Me Anything session. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, and thank you for being with us today. My name is Jessica Correa, and I'll be your moderator for today. We wanted to host this Ask Me Anything session so you had the opportunity to come ask a resident and the people behind Laptitude any questions that you have. So, let me introduce you to our speakers for today. We're joined with Claudio Brancelli, a urology resident at the University of Verona, and a Laptitude user who's been using Laptitude for the last few months. Friso Rolvink, our game designer, and Chris, our game design director. The agenda for today's session will start with Claudio, who will tell us a little bit more about his initial impressions of Laptitude and his experience of having used it for a few months. This will be followed by Friso and Chris, who will tell us a little bit more about how Laptitude was made, where we are today, and where we're headed. And we'll conclude the session with a Q&A segment. So if you have any questions that pop up throughout the session, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to them towards the end of the day. So without further ado, Claudio, the stage is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Claudio Brancelli. I'm a neurology resident at the University of Verona. And I first discovered the Laptitude during my clinical fellowship in robotic surgery at Orsi Academy. I don't know how many of you know Orsi Academy, but Orsi Academy is one of the top centers in the world for robotic surgery training and the training in general. It was during the NASCE event back in September 2025. And even though I was focused on robotic surgery fellowship, I'm a huge believer in all forms of minimally invasive surgery. And I remember that during that event, I saw about hosting a tournament. So now you have to understand two things about me. The first one that I am a passionate gamer. So you can see also by the chair, and I'm an extremely competitive person. So, and I think that Laptitude team could say it because I think they could remember that day. And so that day I could not just walk by, and I was involved, I remember, in clinical stuff. I was not involved in clinical stuff, but just in research. So I have more than free time than usually. And I saw the leaderboard, and I saw the names of my colleagues my colleagues at Ursi Academy, other residents, and I just repeat myself, "No, Claudio, you have to work, you have to do research." But then, just one thing, and okay, I need to be at the top of that list. So I entered, and I started challenging the leaderboard, and I won, I remember. And it was a revelation for me, because it was not just about moving sticks. It was about the pressure of the clock, the precision of the movement, and that gaming instinct of wanting to optimize each movement and every single second. So that was the starting point of my experience with the Laptitude. And after the tournament, I started exploring the different training models. And what I found great is that every mode has different difficulty levels. And I think it's awesome, because now I practice it a lot. And I realized that for me is a key feature, because in a traditional simulator, you often hit a plateau where you feel that you are not improving anymore. Here, it allows to constantly push yourself and push your boundaries, because you don't just do an exercise, you try to master it, to go to the next level, to the highest level, and it's exactly like a video game. If you think about it, you won't stop until you clear the hardest level with a perfect score, or maybe the best one that you can do. So you find yourself repeating a task 10, 20, 50 times, not because you have to, but because you want to. You want to shave off that half second. So I've now integrated Laptitude exercise into my daily routine at home. And we all know that as a resident, the life is not so easy, because you come home after a long day in the hospital, you are tired and your brain just want to shut down. And traditionally, training at home means setting up a bulky plastic box, so you have to check the camera, you have to move the instrument, so it's so easy, in particular in the days that you are very busy, you are very tired. And sometimes I think could be a barrier for the classic boxes. But with the setup, this flexible like Laptitude, all you need is a laptop and the Laptitude box, or maybe sometimes you can use also your phone with the Laptitude box, and I can turn what I call that time into skill time. For example, I can practice while the water for the pasta is boiling. You know, I'm Italian, so I do a lot of pasta. And instead of just mindlessly scrolling my phone or watching TV, so I just spend 25, 30 minutes per day practicing because I want to, and I want to beat my colleagues, for example, my colleagues score, or unlock the harder level of that exercise, for example. It's about consistency over intensity, and this tool makes consistency very easy, I think. And beyond the standard models, I recently had the opportunity to test some beta features. And these new scenarios move away from simple drills into a more realistic simulation of a true surgical environment. And I think it's great. Even if we have to say that for the moment, no specific urology model is available yet. I think yet, because now I'm looking at developers here that are with us today, and but the cognitive load is very similar to a real procedure, and it's much closer to what we actually face in the operating room, and for me could be a game changer for the simulation, for building a real confidence with the step of a procedure. And this brings me to the core of why I really use it and why I really appreciate Laptitude. I think it's for the gamification of the simulation. I think it's great. Surgery, you know, it requires endless repetition to build the muscle memory, which can quickly become monotonous, I think. And if it's boring, you know, it's hard to do it. Laptitude, I think, transforms that grind into a real challenge. For me, the online mode is the true value add of Laptitude. And checking the leaderboards and virtually challenging peoples around the world turns training into a sort of, surgical esports, if we want. I no longer see it as a work or a job, but like a time to have fun and practice and maybe improve my skills, my surgical skills. And if you want to see how seriously I take this, yeah, maybe too much, but I'm too competitive. But you can see a reel on my Instagram page, but also on Laptitude's official page on Instagram about the NASCE event. You can see me celebrating like I'm the best one, I'm the, the best in the world, or something like this. Of course, it's just to have fun, but it shows how this game really gets your adrenaline pumping and pushes you to be better, faster, and more precise. And when you are that engaged, I think you learn faster. So I'm finding this approach very effective for my growth as a resident, but as a surgeon in general, I think I have to say. It's about taking ownership of your training. And now I will leave the floor to the expert for the technical details, but I'll be happy to answer any questions during the Q&A, especially if any of you think you can actually beat my times on the leaderboards of Laptitude. So thank you.
Thank you, Claudio. That was very insightful, and you're giving me some ideas that we should host some online competitions to challenge you with the board. Yeah.
Of course, for sure.
So now I'd like to hand it over to our game developers. So Friso, I'll hand it over to you to get us started.
Yeah, thank you. It's really great to hear from you, Claudio, about your experience. I think that's a lot of the stuff that you're saying. That's also what we aim for, what we want to do with curious cases, particularly later also with the rest of the latitude set. Let me tell a little bit about the journey to get there, because Grendel Games, we are already around for relatively a long time. I think 15 to 20 years, something like that. And not sure if anybody knows, but before Latitude, we created Underground, which was our first laparoscopic training game, and that was already 10 to 15 years ago. I'm not entirely sure about the numbers. I'm also getting a little bit older, but that was our first venture into making something which is complex, which requires a lot of training, a lot of precision, which is very important, and turn that into a game. And back then, we really were, we were also gamers ourselves. I'm sharing one thing with you, is that I'm also a competitive gamer. I got to Diamond in StarCraft 2. That's my sort of achievement badge. And we wanted to bring this joy of being the best, but also like the enjoyment of games to just being able to train something, to learn something. And with Underground, we did that for the first time. There we try to make the laparoscopic training with I've got the set right here, and turn it into sort of a puzzle game, puzzle cinematic adventure, and it was great. It looked very nice. It also doubled as an entertainment game, so it was released on the Wii and the Wii U back then when that was just released. And people played it as an entertainment game, and they didn't even know that it was to actually train surgery. We had researchers running to validate it as well as a training tool. So it also doubled as a training tool and as an entertainment game, and that was really cool to see. And we also learned a lot from that first venture into laparoscopic training with a game. So it was really great that I think 4 years ago we started with Latitude and Curious Cases to sort of take all that knowledge, also take the knowledge from all our other training programs and in the medical sector, and put it into like one big project to show to the world that gaming can really be used to train, in this case, laparoscopic surgery. At the beginning, the biggest learning from Underground was that it was maybe even too entertaining, so people couldn't see that was also for training. It was based on an adventure underground, yeah, hence the name, where you would save little robots to help save the main character from the evil guy, like the classic story. And it was set in a very beautiful environment, but you didn't really see what the relation was with surgery always. So you had these instruments going in to do the operation on the robots and to do the operation on the puzzles, but it was a little bit too far away. And I think that was one of our biggest things that we want to improve. We want to make it really obvious that that's for surgical training. So one of the things that we did with Curious Case, even though it's a lot different from your traditional training simulator, it has a lot of vibrant graphics. It is still the same actions that you do as, for example, the box trainer. So for Curious Cases, we took the box trainer as sort of an example of what we wanted to do, like the kind of skills that we want to train, the basic things that we want to do there. And the exercise you do are named after the exercise you do in the box trainer. So if you have Curious Cases and you're playing the transferring level, which is about the pack transfer from one side to the other. If you're playing ligation, then you're ligating, and if you're playing suturing, then you're suturing. So like 1-to-1, instead of hiding it in a nice shell, even though that nice shell is great for a storytelling purpose and for immersion, you just need that really obvious link of, hey, I'm training this, I'm getting better at this, while still not forgetting that we are making games to train. So we do give this cool environment that you play in, and that you can really immerse yourself in a little story within the Curious Cases. So that's how we got to this point where we launched Curious Cases, where we are working on skill drills and also procedures. A little bit of introduction. I hope it sparked interest for questions. And I'll hand it off to Chris, maybe through Jess. You want to say something in between?
Yeah, sure.
No,
Thanks
I
for the
think Chris, go ahead.
yeah, Jessica, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, nothing to add on my end. You can
All
go.
right, all right. Right. So I think what's maybe interesting to zoom in on a little bit, and Friso hinted at it already, is that we built the Latitude experience around the player's learning journey, and I think that is key in this whole story because that is sort of the glue that ties everything together. And you can see that reflected in the fact that we've created 3 products, right? So we have curious cases, we have skill drills, and we're now working on procedures. And all of these reflect one specific stage in the learning journey of our players, of our customers, right? So where in curious cases, you're very much focusing on learning the core skills, right? We've really broken skill acquisition down into its atomic components and sort of teach you the basic building blocks of performing laparoscopic surgery. Then when you move into skill drills, it is much more about repetition, right? Because if you want to learn a new skill, it's very important. There's also all of us have been saying that repetition is very important. You need to repeat, and usually repetition is not that fun, right? So we've been looking for a way to make that fun, and that's all. That's what skill drills is about, right? And this is where the competitive component comes in, and the scoring component comes in. And then for the last part of the learning journey, we really want to try to provide you with an environment where you can adapt, right? Where you have all of these skills gathered throughout your journey, throughout the first 2 products, and where you can apply these to all kinds of interesting, different anatomical variations, very much lifelike, right? With lifelike interactions, so that procedures is also a place where you can come back to time and time again, right? So if there is a new release of a new procedure that we go into a new medical field, you can come back, right? You can learn those new procedures, you can get acquainted with them, and in that way, we hope that Laptitude also has a lot of long-term value, and you keep returning to sort of keep buffing up your skills and keep improving over time.
Thank you, Chris and Friso. I think now we can jump into some questions. So I see that we've already got one question in the chat, and we also had asked our users if they could send in some questions ahead of time. So I've also got those. But I'll start with the first question for you, Claudio. What are some of your favorite exercises on Laptitude?
I have to say, with the Laptitude, we have different kind of exercise, but I think the best, or maybe what I think are the best for me, are the suturing, the clipping, but also the section and the cutting, because I think the value add in that exercise is that you are not just complete that exercise, but you have some obstacle like the spider, like the plant disease that just running, and you have to just do it faster. So I think that kind of exercise are, for me, are the best one.
Yeah. And so to take it to maybe Chris,
Yeah.
what kind of feedback do users receive during and after exercises? And also with feedback, the type of feedback that you receive, if it's haptic or tactile, this is a question we get a lot. So if you answer both with that and also going into the dashboard.
Yeah, exactly. So throughout all 3 of the products, we do a lot of tracking, we do a lot of evaluation of your actions, and we provide you a lot of feedback on how you are handling the instruments, if you're making mistakes, how fast you're going. So it's a very let's call it a data rich experience. And apart from providing you with that feedback while you're playing, we're also tracking a lot of things behind the scenes and moving those into the dashboard, right? So Friso can probably tell you a little bit more about curious cases and what is tracked there. But to be a little bit more specific about skill drills. So in skill drills, we focus mainly on your mistakes, because the mistakes play into the core mechanic of getting a high score. And all of those mistakes are tracked, right? So all of your mistakes and how often you make that mistake, they're all tracked over one session. We include that with your time, and we send that to the dashboard so that you can always sort of look at your progress over time. Our aim, obviously, is to have you improve over time, right? So we really would love for your scores to, be on an upward curve and improve over time, because that shows to us that the training is being effective, right? You're able to set a higher and higher score. So Friso, maybe you can add some info on curious cases and maybe on the haptics as well.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to make that little separation of types of feedback. So when we're talking about feedback, we can mean two things: the haptic feedback, or like what you're feeling when you're touching something. And these really cool, expensive simulators, they have let's call it force feedback. So you actually push into something, and it will give you a force back. We have like a slightly different console here, which is doesn't cost thousands of euros. So we work with different types of feedback. So we work mainly with haptic feedback. So if you move into something, if you bump into something in the game, you'll get a slight buzz on your controller, and if it's like depending on how much force it is, it will increase in force. So you get a little bit of feeling of when you are touching something, when you are interacting with things in the game. And also a funny anecdote I want to share about that is that because we got a lot of feedback on events as well of the set that it doesn't really give you the force feedback, because you really want to touch things, and when you're working with a box training, you feel it. You actually grab it and you can feel the block that you're holding. And with a virtual world, you don't have that, because you have all virtual objects. So a lot of especially people who are just started their training, I would say they complained about it a lot, and I understand, because it's very important to sort of get that feeling. But then the older surgeons, like the people who are already training for a long time or already doing active surgery, they were not bothered by it at all, because they said, it's not that important, because you need to be super precise anyway. You cannot squeeze very hard to feel if it's there. You just need to be very careful. And so they said, it's actually helping a little bit with handling the instruments, because it makes you more careful in using that. So I think that was a nice thing for us to hear as well, that you don't really need to have this force feedback to make an effective training tool for these types of skills. On the other hand, we do think it's very important to give that feedback to the player. And the other separation I want to make is that we have like the immediate feedback, the things that you see when you're playing the game, and the feedback afterwards. And for that, we thought a lot about, okay, what kind of things do you want to see during and after the game? And we also talked a lot with people who are training about what they would like to see. And the conclusion from that was that while you're playing, you don't have a lot of mind space for like feedback stories, or like a lot of stuff happening which is not the core thing that you're working on. So we really try to make something in the game which is very small. And if it's okay, I'm going to play a little bit so I can show it and point it out, because it makes it a lot easier to explain. So I've got curious cases running here. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, great. So let's pick a simple one. Let's pick grasping. I'm gonna play on easy. And so the feedback during the game, it can be in different ways. So it will give you a little bit of a buzz when I touch the platform here. It will give me a little buzz when I grab this, and you see that when I do something. So when I place it here, I get good. I did good. If I break something and I break it again and I collide my instruments, I really mess up, and then if I play something, tell me that's bad, because I messed up a lot of stuff, and we didn't want to go too much into all the stuff that you're doing wrong that you could have done better, because when you're doing this, especially on the harder levels, you just don't have the mind space for it to realize that. So we sort of converted everything to good, bad, and I think there's also perfect. Let me try to do it perfect. Excellent. Here, so you get like one word which describes how you are doing. So that's the kind of instant feedback that you get immediately. We also have some other feedback mechanisms. For example, when you push into something, you will see the tips turning red. It means that the instrument is stuck a little bit. So you have to get it unstuck. You can see it more clearly. And we have the white outline moving over there, and that is to solve the problem of not having this force feedback. So we had a lot of players, they grab something, they place it, and they sort of keep on pushing it into the ground because they think that is not, they don't feel that it's been placed yet. So they're like, oh, I have to probably move it lower. And to communicate that they're actually already reached that point, we turn the instrument red and give the white outline so that you know that, okay, I am already there and I just need to release it. And then you can continue with the game. Another thing I want to point out is in the top right corner, you see the average accuracy. So we try to make this statistics to help you become more accurate or like more proficient at the case. Here we see the overview of the feedback after a level. So you get a sort of general score, the exercise rating. In this case, I did good, 72%, not that good. And you get a bit of a breakdown of the things that you did wrong, all the penalties that you got, and what their effect on the scores. And especially if you want to get better, and if you want to improve this, then this is very important, because during the game, you're just doing your thing, and after you finish the case, then you can look into, okay, well, why did I get the score that I got? 72% is quite high for how I performed, but I'm also performing I'm playing a very easy level, so it will give me a little bit of slack. So it will adjust the scores a little bit. I can make a bit more mistakes on an easy level than on a hard level. But still, of course, I want to improve it, so I want to get a 100% rating and beat Claudio to make sure that I'm on top of the leaderboard. So that's I think what you can expect from the feedback while playing the game and the feedback after playing a game.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for telling us more about the feedback. And I see we got a question a bit more about features. So again, for the game developers, were there any features that you initially thought that surgeons wanted, but you didn't see it as useful being implemented? So it's a curious question that's come in. So I'm not sure if you have an answer top of mind.
No, that's a very good question. Let me think about it. Maybe Friso, if you have something, then jump in.
I can ask Claudio another question and we can come back to that.
Yeah, we'll think about it.
So Claudio, at what stage in residency do you see Laptitude being the most beneficial?
So I think that the best stage is when in the beginning, because you are just approaching the surgery in general, maybe the laparoscopy surgery, and I think the laparoscopy surgery is one of the hardest to learn. So that's why when you start, I think you have to start in the beginning. So Laptitude, I think, can help you with the basic skills that are very important to approach the laparoscopy, because we know these exercises are very good for the surgeon that is starting approaching the laparoscopy. But in the end, of course, you can continue. So I think also in the last years of residency, Laptitude could be helpful for you, because you have also to maintain the ability, the skills that you developed during the years, and maybe also thanks to Laptitude or other box, for example. But also I think because I remember one of my colleagues, that is senior colleague, that he or in the past he did a lot of laparoscopy, but now he's a robotic surgeon. But I remember that, for example, in urology there are some kind of surgery that you can do also in laparoscopy, just to not spend a lot of money with the robotic surgery. For example, in that case was a nephrectomy, and I remember that a few days before he just asked me, Claudio, can I just do something with the box, just to repeat some movement, just I want to do again, because I don't do a laparoscopy for a long time. So I think have this this kind of box or this kind of simulator, I think could be helpful also. I think also for the career. Of course, in the beginning, it's the best one. It's the thing that you have to do. But I think in the end of the residency, maybe less. But I think it's always helpful to have.
Yeah, thank you. Coming back to you, Chris, do you have more thoughts on the features?
So what I just heard is that Tim has an answer, has a good answer. So I think we can give him a place on the stage, Jess. Looking at you as moderator.
Yes. Let me try to do that real quickly. But as I do that, actually, maybe Chris, I'll hand another question to you, and then
Yeah.
we'll get him
Sounds good.
on. So I see that we got another question about procedures and what modules are coming to procedures. And I
Yeah.
see one about gynecology and if there are any included or if they will be included in the near future.
Yes, definitely. And we don't necessarily want to spoil too much, right? Because we're still looking at the order of the procedures in which we want to implement them. But gynecology is definitely represented. Currently, we're looking at 3 procedures for gynecology. And in total, we're looking at more than 8 procedures for this year. And all from different medical specializations. So our aim is to go wide and to offer a variety where we can.
Okay, great. Tim, you should be able to join the stage now. On the bottom of your screen, you should see a message that says join stage.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I see at least 2 questions. So one is pertaining to the scenarios that we're and anatomical varieties that we're proposing. That's Cheryl Ampas, I guess. And James had a question. Which one do you want me to answer first?
You can answer James's question first.
Oh, yeah. So I think there were a lot of variations that surgeons came up with and residents came up with. Fiso kind of hinted at it when we discussed Underground. So actually, that started in 2009 and it was only released in 2012. So it's a long time ago. And the fun thing was that with Underground, we strive to create something that was a true entertainment experience, much like any video game that you would play. And this came from Henk de Kater Hoedemaker, impossibly to pronounce Dutch name, who was a surgeon and the director of the skill center of a regional university medical center. And he said residents are not showing up to do their reps. They're not showing up to the skill center. They play around with simulation a little bit. And once they've done some of the simulations and they've actually went to work in the wet lab, so either with cadavers or pigs, pig stations or whatever, they refuse to return to the simulation stuff. But apparently, the majority of them are playing video games in the evening, either on their phone or on their consoles or whatever. But they're not coming back to the skills lab. Can we together, you as a company that has experience in creating engaging applications or video games, can we, and us as educators, can we figure out why that is? And we did. We talked to all of these residents. I think it was about 130 at the time. And the majority of them really liked video games better than they liked the simulators. So we went off on a tangent. We decided to press on every aspect of video game design that we could think of. So we wanted to have production value, meaning great graphics. We wanted to have and sound effects. So we actually rented an orchestra. We had a composer write a complete soundtrack. We had a director do actual cutscenes and animations. It was a video game that had boss fights, that had levels. But the problem was that none of it was voluntary. So it was a narrative game that was an actual video game. It lended game design aspects from Lemmings, from The Incredible Machine, from Pikmin, and other various classical games that people seem to prefer. And but none of it was elective. You actually had to play through narrative, and we assumed that would go down well. And then actually we talked to surgeons when the game was done, because all of this was based on assumption, and we tested it as often as we could, and everybody seemed to like it. But in hindsight, coming up with something that was elective was far better. So some of the voices that came up during that development, so these were key opinion leaders, people that were well-versed surgeons that had done 10K plus laparoscopy procedures, laparoscopic procedures from all over the world, residents, and so on and so forth. They said, well, we would like to elect an exercise that would focus on the things that we would like to train. So couldn't we make a suite with mini games rather than come up with something that was narrative driven from A to Z, that would span a story, that would be connected through cutscenes, pardon, that would take you from skill to skill. And that's why eventually we decided to come up with the structure that we did for Laptitude. So that was one of the things. The other thing that Friso mentioned was quite accurate, that Chris elaborated on, which was the force feedback issue. One of the larger problems within the skill centers was also that these expensive simulators often broke down, and one of the reasons was that the motors of the force feedback. So don't confuse this with the hints that you feel when something rumbles, which is not actual force feedback, because force feedback actually pushes you physically back. It wasn't so much of a big deal, and we decided not to do it because of the reasons that Friso said. It's very expensive, they break down a lot. And one of the most surprising things was that most experienced surgeons actually, within Laptitude, said, hey, if I feel the rumble of the controller like you would feel on a smartphone, but my eyes can correlate it visually with an interaction that's working on the screen, my brain informs me that it is this particular force that I'm feeling because of the experience that I have, which was very surprising to us, and apparently very convincing to them. So we're glad we made that decision. So those are two stories about the development that tied into the experience of users, key opinion leaders, surgeons, and registrars, residents during the development. Jess, do you want me to get back to what Charalampos was saying?
Yes, I will ask Claudio another question, and then we can get to the next question. So, Claudio, something else that we get asked a lot is how accurately can you transfer skills learned through aptitude to surgery?
Because I don't know, for this is a good question, because I think for Laptitude, you have to understand that Laptitude for me it's like a normal simulator. So if you think that for a surgeon a simulator it's very important for the basic skills, of course with a simulator, if you think about the traditional box, you can learn basic skills. If you have some creative idea, you can do something more. But for example, in with Laptitude, you can do basic skills. But now, I think it was Chris said, but also Tim said, that they are developing a new kind of exercise. For example, now I tried a beta version of a new kind of exercise with the real life movement or step of the surgery. For example, now I saw, I don't know if I can say it, but but a kind of surgery that is not urology but is another kind of a specialty. And I think it's great because, for example, sometimes you are there and you can just simulate that moment. So I think it's a great thing, and maybe of course it's a simulator but just can help you to do something that you can do, and you can replicate into the DOR. So I think great. I think it's great.
Thanks, Claudio. I'll hand it back over to you, Tim, for the next question.
Yeah, well, tying into what Claudio said and what Charalampos asked, so we have a roadmap. We have great funding for the upcoming years, and we pride ourselves in the fact that we've set up relationships by coming to all of these events, some of these events that we met Claudio at ORSI, but also at NHS teaching hospitals. We've been to the US, we've been to many of these conferences, spoken to key opinion leaders, and so on and so forth. And we consider them our community. And what we want the community to tell us is what is it that you guys need? So the roadmap dictates a couple of things. And Claudio was kind enough to not to spoil all of the details. Thank you for that, Claudio. So I get to do say at least a couple of things here, lift a tip of the veil. But salpingectomy, for instance, is one of the procedures that we're working on. So is appendectomy, and there's a urology suite that we're working on, and we're planning to do a lot of different things for procedures specifically, but also to keep developing skill drills, which you've had the pleasure of playing the new beta for and expanding on that content. But we really want the community to weigh in and to tell us what they find most interesting. Now, the institutions, so we have to be fair about this. There's like a halfway split here in our target audience. Obviously, our consumers, basically our individuals, our B2C community, and your voice weighs as heavy as the institutional, the B2B community. And we need to look at both to see where the most interest lies into what needs to be trained and what kind of content you want. I think one of the most interesting aspects of Laptitude is the fact that we have Orgen, which allows us to create a multitude of scenarios. And there are different ways to go about this, and this is part of the discussion that we should have with you as a community. So we have Orgen, which is our system that generates basically an infinite amount of anatomical variations for procedures. But to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Claudio or Charalampos or anyone else from the audience, it doesn't make sense to give you an endless amount of variations, because there are only so many variations that really matter to you when you come across patients. So what we're currently looking at and discussions that we're having that we'd love for you to join in on as a community is what is the spectrum? As a resident and a registrar, and later on as a surgeon, what would you want to have trained? There's an appendectomy, right? That's what we're going to offer within procedures, and obviously all of those parts of that procedure will be offered in skill drills, like we now do with with one part of the procedure that you hone your skill in over and over and over within skill drills. What kind of cholecystectomies do we need to offer for you? Or how many variations? Are we going from simple cases to edge cases? How many variations do you need to have in between? What are the most occurring cases that we can define that you would want to have trained, instead of, having something that offers you an endless amount of variations? So that's just one of the many directions that we're pondering and that we're looking to discuss with you as an active community to make these decisions, to come up with the best possible solution for your training needs.
Thank you, Tim. Since I think we're going ahead of time, I'll give Friso the last question. Is there a module in which a user can practice suturing without the pressure of time?
If you have a cheat code, then yes. So I want to look at it a bit a different way. So I think it would be a good feature to also disable the time. Actually, like I said, there's a cheat code to disable the time, because then we developers can also try to finish a suture within the time. But the way that we approach this is a little bit different. So I'm assuming that you want to practice without the pressure of time, because you just want to, you don't want to feel too stressed. You just want to take your time trying to figure out how it works, how to do it, and how we approach that instead of removing the time limit, we keep the time limit, because we think that a little bit of stress is interesting and makes it a bit more tense and a bit more exciting for the player. And instead we break it up in simpler versions. So for example, for suturing, you're not going to do the full suture right away. No, you're first just going to pass the needle through the balloon in this case, and try to get the thread through the balloon, because that's sort of the first step that you need to do. And by approaching it that way and keep adding difficulty to it, we ramp it up until you can do the full suture within 3 minutes. And that is our approach there. Like I said, I think it's still nice to have sort of a sandbox mode where you can just take your time and just try out. So we'll note it down, and who knows, maybe we'll just give you the cheat code to stop the timer next time. But I think that approaching it that way, just trying to ramp up the difficulty, that will be much more interesting, while still keeping you engaged and a little bit excited about the gameplay.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. So thank you so much to Claudio, Friso, Chris, and Tim for answering all of your questions. And thank you to everyone who sent us questions today and for joining us. If you have any other questions that come up after this conversation and you're thinking about it, feel free to send me a message or an email. And if you need to learn more about Laptitude, you have all the information on our website at laptitude.com. So thank you again for joining, and I hope you all have a lovely evening.